Welcome everyone to the Lighthouse Podcast. We are back in the studios alongside my business partner, good friend Alex Camargo. Today we're going to be asking a few questions to a good friend, Geoffrey Brennan. He actually works as a realtor with Coldwell Banker. He's the lead of the Lighthouse Team. Today we're going to be talking about investments. I would highly advise to watch this whole interview so you can learn about investments, so you can learn on what to expect when investing, how to find leads, how to proper analyze a investment property. Without further ado, let me introduce the man of the hour, Jeff. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, taking the time, actually giving us your most important asset, which is your time to be here to pour into other people's lives. The main reason why we do this podcast is to actually do that. This is a form of giving back to the community. So it's a true pleasure having you here today. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and whoever's watching us here today?
All right. Well, I'm Geoffrey Brennan. I'm leader of the Lighthouse Team at Coldwell Banker. I'm also a real estate investor. I've been investing in real estate for the last 13 years. Single-family rehab projects, multifamily rentals, and similar type projects. And I'm real happy to be here today, guys.
Awesome. So how did you start? Were you an agent first or an investor first?
No, I was an investor first. So I started out, I was kind of in between careers, we'll say. I was disenchanted with the career path I was on, which was retail management. And I was looking for something else to do. And I had always wanted to own rental properties. I was introduced to it at a young age from some family members, and it's something I always wanted to do. But being in between careers, you don't have the funds necessarily to get into buying multifamily properties. So at the time, I decided I would flip a property and rehab it, sell it, and use the proceeds to buy a multifamily. And that's what I did. That was in 2009-10. And
wow, in that market, huh?
Yeah. Well, the market was starting to come down.
Yeah.
But
you're a brave man buying properties in 2009 and 10.
You don't know what you don't know. I guess when you're first getting into it, and it was one of those things. It doesn't always happen, but when sometimes you have that, like, I want this, you almost can't see the negatives because you're so blinded by what you want. And sometimes that works. It helps get you through it. And the first rehab project was rough. It was only my real second experience with real estate in general. I just purchased my own personal home with my wife 6-8 months before that, and So after that flip, I bought a 3-family and kind of tried to continue to repeat the process over the years.
That's awesome. So as an investor, when was the last investment property that you bought to buy and hold, or to hold?
When was the last one that I bought? I bought a property last summer, which was 8 units, and that was a step up for me. Mostly mine have been three unit properties. So that was beginning of August, say August 1st.
And I wanted to ask that question to illustrate that as an investor, you really buy in any market, because you bought it in when it was dirt cheap, and then you also bought it now when it's expensive in a way.
Exactly.
As long as the money, the numbers make sense. Is that how you look at it? Right?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers have to make sense, and we also, being in a different place from then, say from that first property to this last one, the 11-year difference in timeline, I'm different too. So I think, like, getting into it, was just, I want to do this. I know this is a good thing. I want that little bit of cash flow. And now, having been in it for over 10 years, I see this as a much longer term thing. I always had that, like, blurry, like, oh yeah, and I'll own this for a long time and it'll generate, but now there's appreciation, there's rental appreciation, there's there's different ways of leveraging your assets, and it's kind of, my knowledge of it has expanded. So it's not just this property. What is it today? Now having owned property for a long time, I can kind of see that trajectory of my own portfolio, things that I've kept, not just it's growing by adding stuff.
Yeah. Do you also nowadays do flips, or do you only buy and hold?
So I still do flips. I have a rehab project going right now, which is also hard to find in this market, on or off the market. It's hard. Everything is inflated, and there's not enough room for most rehabbers on the back end. But I do that. Specifically, most of my real estate investing money, I would say at least 50% of it, maybe closer to 75% of it, stays within my portfolio to grow it, to reinvest. And that's kind of, from that start, where it's like I had no money. I had to do that first flip to buy what I wanted, which was a multifamily. And now, that's the way I look at all my real estate investing. It's for the profit of, my lifestyle has grown and things have grown over the years, so I do use some of the money, but a large portion of it still is just to continue to grow my real estate investing.
That's awesome.
I think with the whole flipping thing, if you're not doing that constantly, then it might become a little bit of an issue in case you don't, like with the 1031, right? So like, let's just say you buy something and you flip it. Now you have a deadline to reinvest that money. Otherwise, you're going to be paying capital gains on that. If you want to talk about that a little bit, and how do you feel about the BRRRR method as well? Have you ever done one of those, and what that is really?
Yeah, so the 1031, I know enough about it, but I'm not well versed in it to really talk about the ins and outs of it. There are some nuances with rehab and flip projects to actually utilizing a 1031. Anyone who's thinking of it, no matter how much you think, I definitely recommend use a 1031 intermediary consultant. They cost a few dollars, but they'll save you in taxes and potential problems. It's worth it. I've used them with clients, and they're really good.
And it's important to point out that your real estate agent may not be your best, or in this case, should not be your best source of information for a 1031 exchange. Neither should your attorney be, like your accountant. Go check with your accountant.
Yeah, check with your accountant. And, even most of the 1031 intermediaries and consultants, they'll have a no obligation consultation with you. Tell them what you're laying out. I was trying to do one for the property I bought over last summer. And because of some title issues in the way that I bought that very first property, which you don't know, it made it pretty much impossible. It would have made ownership of the new property much more difficult to do the 1031. And this was an hour conversation with this person who, that's all they do all day long, 1031s. That's it.
That's awesome.
And I as a real estate agent, I've taken 1031 classes. I've done full weekends on the subject, and I know enough, but I still want to hire a professional, somebody that does it all day, every day.
There's a value in that.
And that goes for anything, like you said, anything you hire for, you want to hire a professional.
Yeah. Now, from the perspective of being a landlord, how important to you are tenants? And I'm asking this question because I'd like for you to elaborate into how you treat your tenants, because I've seen it all. I've seen, I think there was a case in Hartford where this guy somehow got this, was able to buy this building for Section 8 rentals, and it was a whole building, and the state was allowing him to run that as a Section 8 rental, and there were cockroaches and they were like all like mice, everything in the building, to the point where he lost it. I'm like, dude, like you lost a gold mine.
Yeah.
The state is allowing you to buy to own this building and run Section 8, and you're getting a check every first of the month, no matter what happens, from like hundreds of people, and you still lost that opportunity. And of course, don't know the guy, don't know the full story. But that's one extent of it where landlords are not taking care of their tenants. But then, of course, prior experience with you and having these conversations with you, you really care. So like
I really do care about my tenants, and it's not to say that there's not going to be a problem here or a leak there and stuff pops up. But I really do care about my tenants. I really have the mindset of that, like they are, I'm serving them. It's my job as a landlord is to provide them a quality house to live in. House, apartment, whatever you want to call it. I actually heard from a real estate investor in a class I was in. It said that he doesn't call his renters tenants, calls them residents, because it gives a different feel to it. And when you define it that way, like these people are residents. They're like that's where they're living. They're not. Tenants has this like, I own this, you give me money kind of feel. But residents are, you almost think of someone like residing in your home, which is what they're doing. And so
with their families, building memories and stuff like that.
Yes, this is where they have their holidays. This is where they feel safe.
Their first kid,
and they don't want you don't want them to go there to the house that they live in, that they pay your mortgage on, and feel mad about being there. This is broken. They don't listen. The landlord doesn't call. He only calls when the rent's late. So I think just being, for me, it's trying to communicate a lot, whether it's phone call or text. I really don't do emails with my tenants. It's just less personal. A text message works for like a written record enough, but it's just something to kind of keep it more personal.
Yeah. And I like that you put it that way, because I'm going to compare this to another industry. I have friends who own Chick-fil-A's out there, and then we go to Chipotle all the time, and we see how Chipotle struggles to keep staff. But then you go to Chick-fil-A, there's 40 kids working the drive-through line. Mm-hmm. And then, that got me thinking, what's the difference? I mean, Chipotle has an excessive amount of employees to better serve you, and they're a bigger company than Chipotle is. And then that got me thinking, like, why? Like, why can Chick-fil-A keep so many employees, and then Chipotle struggles with keeping people? Like, we've been to a couple of Chipotle stores, and they were closed because there was no staff. And I'm like, it's the culture. And if Chick-fil-A can profit by even having this extra amount of employees, then let's learn from that. And I think the same goes to landlords. Like you can prosper by doing the right things, by being personable with your tenants. Whether you have 1 or 100, there's that culture that you can create with your people where you're loyal to them, and they'll be loyal to you in return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and the other thing is that as much as possible, not often, but try to like be seen by the tenants. Not in like a bad way, like I'm checking to see if there's newspapers thrown around the parking lot, but just to have them see you're there, taking care of things. If they're they call you that there's an issue, like as much as you can, try to show up.
Yeah.
Try to be seen and try to say hello.
Here's a thing that I've always thought that would be cool, and in my quest to eventually buy some investment properties. Like, I've never heard of a tenant who got a thank you note in the mail. Like, just thank you. Like, thank you for being a good tenant for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm like this industry needs to do more of that. It's
I don't
separate themselves from everybody else.
I've never done the thank you. The one thing I try to do is, and I've probably, I hope they don't see it because somebody, I'm sure I missed somebody over the last, over the pandemic times. But the one thing I will do is I try to send a gift card, a small gift card, and a thank you to anyone that has a baby that lives in one of the places.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
that's a big thing for me, is that like, wow, like you had you had a baby, like a new life came into the world in a place that I own, and that's like really cool to me.
That's awesome.
You know, so I you know, as much as I can, I try to say just like, you know, congratulations on the new little one, and you know, it's nothing big, just a little, you know, a little something. But because I think that's really cool,
awesome.
And I like I said, you know, having that mindset of like, you know, these are families here, and they're you know, they're occupying you know, your space. That's their space, you know, and it's just cool to me. So.
And my question to you regarding that, so we're talking about here on a landlord's point of view, right? So right now you're a landlord because you manage all your properties, right?
I do, yeah. It's still manageable to me, and you know, and I enjoy it. I do.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people out there who want to not be a landlord; they want to be a real estate investor, which you know. Basically, at that point, now there's a property management taking care of the properties, and they don't get the phone calls anymore. They don't get, they're not they're not going to be personal anymore with the tenants because they just don't want to get anything to do with it. The money comes in, and they're paying a fee for that. How do you feel about that? Do you want to, at one point in your career, go into fully passive income? Because right now a lot of people get this mistaking about like, oh, I bought a multifamily, I have passive income now. If you manage it, it's not passive, right?
Right. If you manage it, it's not passive, right? And we were talking about taxes. You don't want it to be passive.
No.
Yeah. But I don't think that I want to. I think, you know, there's certain things that I like the way that I've kind of developed doing them. I think if I ever were to become more passive as a real estate investor, I would want to transition it to my own management team that I trained. So I don't think I personally, because of the way I like to do things, would do it. I also feel when I talk to other real estate investors or people who want to be but don't want to be the landlord, like you said, I feel like they're hiring the property manager to, a lot of times what I've heard is that they're hiring it to kind of deal with the things they don't want to.
Right.
Which means, you know, they don't have necessarily the ability to be, you know, tough, you know. Oh, someone's not paying. I need to tell them that they have a late fee. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Oh, I have to.
That's me.
I don't
then I have my wife. But I have my wife for that.
Well, that's good. See, and it's nice to have
Alex is the guy who's going to call them. You don't have to pay next month. you were late this month. You're probably going through a hardship.
You know, somebody was like, oh man, I don't think I could ever like, you know, kick somebody out. And I was like, you know, that's tough.
It's part of
right, and that's not to say that I could, right? But you have to be able to, even if you don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be able to kick somebody out on Christmas Eve with nowhere to go. Doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to.
Yeah. In your head, you have to at least practice being able to.
You have to be able to.
Yeah.
You know?
Christmas Eve, nowhere to go.
I said you don't have to do it, and you shouldn't do it, and I wouldn't do it.
Wait until January 5th.
I wouldn't do it. But the point is that, like, you know, if you're going to, you know, get to that level, you know, that's what they're hiring. A lot of people are hiring property managers to. They're like, they can be cold, faceless, and whatever. It doesn't really separate you. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it separates like that 1 minute, but if the property manager goes and does that, kicks somebody out on Christmas Eve, right? What is the person's still mad at you. You're still the owner, right? Like you still did it. So you sent your hired gun to do it.
I didn't do it. I paid it.
I paid a guy to do it. I paid a guy to do it. Yeah, but you know, for me, I also just I feel, and it's nothing that I like, you know, knew right away or was natural, but it just kind of, you know, developed over time. You know, just simple things like when someone calls you with a problem. You know, I have some investor friends that, you know, will get upset when they get a call, right? And they'll start thinking like, what did they do to break this? That faucet wasn't leaking, right? But you know, the first thing you should respond is, I'm sorry. You know, their faucet's not working. You know, it's not like it's your faucet's working in your house. Like, you know, just be kind, you know, and kind of do that. So that's why I don't think I would ever want to turn it over to a third party property manager.
Right.
I'd love to have a vision of growing and, like, you know, training an assistant to maybe take over at some point.
And it also depends on the situation as well, because you are an agent, you are involved with real estate full time, 100%. That's what you do every day. For example, I have a friend that he's an investor. He have people taking care of his properties because he has a full-time job. He has 2 kids got to take care of, and he works a lot on that job. So he just, you know, he wants to invest in real estate, doesn't have the time to take care of on his own, and that works out for him.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. There are some great, you know, to backtrack a little bit, there are some great property managers out there. You know, if you're working with a real estate agent to buy your investment property, like, talk to them, get a referral for a property management company. Some real estate agencies actually have property management branches. So there's definitely ways. And, you know, I think if you're going down that route, I would hire a licensed realtor who is also a property manager. I would not hire a property manager that's actually a property maintenance person only, if they're going to be doing management type stuff too.
Right.
You know, realtors, as you know, we and this is what I tell my tenants too, is you know, I'm a realtor, so I can't get away with any, like, landlord BS, right? Like, I'm bound to have some other stuff. You know, I don't have any, like, I don't know, or this. I was like, so not only could I get in trouble for doing something wrong here, I could lose my license. That's my actual like livelihood, you know? So that's why I think if you're going to have a property manager, have them be a licensed realtor too.
Yeah.
You know, just to get that extra layer there.
Now, you have a handful of properties, and we don't have to talk about how many. What are your metrics to determine whether an investment makes a good investment or not?
Okay. So,
let's say here's a 3-family home that just came on the market. I probably do the same thing, but you analyze that multi, and then you run some numbers. You look at the income, and you look at what rents could be brought up to, and then how do you calculate that?
So, you know, obviously I try to look at all the expenses. You know, that's a big one, but, you know, the things that I don't take into account too, that some people do, is I don't take into account depreciation when I'm making my calculations. You know, but I do kind of keep my maintenance budget a little heavier, because no matter how good it looks, I feel like whenever a new owner takes a property, there's things to be done. So, you know, my first 3-year projection definitely has a higher maintenance budget. You know, I'm trying to think. I have it in my spreadsheet because it's, you know, based on my properties. But whatever my maintenance budget is, I actually double it for the first 3 years of owning a property, just because you kind of over 3 years, you basically work through all the units and all the issues that pop up. I do account for having a reserve. It's not usually that much, but if it was a first property I was buying, I would make it a lot higher.
Yeah. And then do you buy for appreciation only, or must you cash flow?
So I have to cash flow. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just part of it. You know, it has to cash flow for me. I don't, you know, when I was first starting, I was like, and, you know, the market was low. I had this, you know, pretty big, you know, ROI that I was looking at, this cash on cash return. Now that's gone down a little bit, and it has to. I mean, it's a little bit harder to make that cash on cash right now with properties increasing. But, you know, rents are also really starting to climb. So, yeah, I mean, I like to be cash on cash. I like to be over 10%. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll say, like, when I was starting and properties were much lower, you know, I had one that I purchased where it was, you know, well north of 20, and it was, you know, it was great.
Oh, wow.
But that went away quickly. What I learned on that one was my early, you know, ownership maintenance budget wasn't high enough.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, it all balances out.
Yeah.
You know, but your spreadsheet, your analysis gets better the more you own, the longer you've owned them.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And you keep learning
Yeah.
as you go, right? The more properties you buy, the more things you learn, and
you learn what things you want to do. You know, not everyone is going to want to do the same things. Not everyone's going to fix the same things. Like there are certain things that break that are not necessarily a health or safety or functionality issue. Some people will defer those longer, you know, and you can, you know, there's certain things, you know, if you have some rotted exterior trim, but you know you're tight because it's new ownership of a property, you could let that go. It's not really affecting anyone. I wouldn't let it go forever, but you know you could let it go 6 months. You can let it go for a time. You know, whereas you know something's leaking, you got to fix it that day.
The earlier the better.
Yeah.
you look at it on the overall picture. Right?
Yeah. And you got to know yourself too. Are you somebody? You know, I know certain investors that, you know, if they see a small piece of rotted trim outside, they have to fix it that day. They have to hire the handyman. It's got to be done, you know, and then they got to paint the whole side of the house to match. And then I have other ones that'll be like, well, when it finally, you know, falls off and you can see straight through the building, that's when we'll put some duct tape on it. But, you know, those are the two ends of the spectrum, and you just kind of, you know, you got to figure out where you land to know, you know, is that little thing a $500-600 instant repair, or is it I'm literally never going to touch it and I'll sell the property with the hole in the side of it, you know, and you land somewhere, you know, on that spectrum.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you only start to understand better after you start doing it yourself, right? Because you can, there's so many people on these social media platforms these days, like, oh, I'm an investor, I'm doing this, and I have this many doors, and I can do this, I can do that. But I would say, like, and I think this is a message that you would have for people who are about to start now. Don't let that dictate on what you're going to do. Like, analyze the things and like maybe listening to this podcast here, talking to people who have been landlords, who's bought properties before, but you really don't get. It's one of those things that you really don't get the feel of it until you actually go out there and do it. You know what I mean?
And I know that can be scary for people, but you're right, Danny. It's something you learn by doing, and you know that can be overwhelming to people. But I don't want to like minimize what it is, but I think if you're interested in learning it, right? If owning real estate for investment is something you want, just like anything you want, you learn about it, you educate yourself, and you can do that as you own it. Like you're really.
You can learn as you go.
You can learn as you go. You know, as long as you're, you know, you care about, you know, the product you're producing, which you should in anything that you own or anything that you're offering for sale or rent as it is. You can learn as you go. You know, you really can. You may not, you know, make as much money the first year or even two, but you can learn it as you go.
But even if you break even, it's still a great opportunity, because as we talk to to people and we get a whole bunch of people who come in and with the idea of flipping a home, and I'm like, well, you couldn't have chosen a worse market to try to start a flipping business. But in what I always tell them is, look, in your first flip, if you break even, that's a win, because most people will lose money in their first flip.
Yeah.
You know? So if you broke even, if you made a little bit of money, like consider that to be a huge win.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, you're right. And it's hard. You know, you were touching on, a lot of people see, you know, real estate investors on social media platforms, and a lot of those are, you know, they're ads designed, and there is knowledge there. I mean, that's part of learning knowledge. You can definitely learn things from you know, internet gurus. They have value. But you know, you can get an unreal expectation too. You can get
you get the highlights.
Yeah. I'm going to make $100,000 every house I flip, and I'm going to do it 20 times a year.
Wholesaling stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
This is how you retire at 40.
Wholesaling.
Wholesaling is.
I'm going to make a bunch by the end of the month. I own. All of a sudden, I was just able to buy 1,000 rental units, and with none of my own money, and I did that in 2 years, and it's all fine.
With only $500 out of my own money.
Yeah, right. And I have 20 employees. And you know what? That might be the path for some people. I've taken a very traditional route, I think, in investing. It's been, raise the money for a full down payment, non-owner occupied, 25% plus down, and buy what I think are good value properties.
Because you're not looking at this as a quick get rich quick scheme. You're actually looking forward to the long run, because that's when they pay off.
And for I know we're all realtors here. For realtors, for the realtors out there, we know this, right? Or we should, right? We should know what the market is. We also know that we don't have a 401k necessarily, right? We may have our own retirement things, but it's a great asset as a realtor to own, to think of as, this is my 401k. This is my retirement plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we bring this to a close, I'd like to ask you, you've been through this investment journey in different markets, right? When everything crashed, you were there, and then you've been buying along the way. What message would you have for the person who is finally ready to start investing today? What would you tell that person? And of course, the major reservation they have is the market is super high, interest rates are super expensive. I really want to invest, but I don't want to buy right now because everything is super high. Whereas if you found an opportunity tomorrow, if the numbers pan out, you're buying and you have experience in this. Mm-hmm. So what message would you give that person?
So I think, I wouldn't not buy just because the market's high, especially if it's a buy and hold property, if it's a rental property. If it cash flows even a little bit, or we'll say break even, right? But you think it's a good investment and the numbers work, I would not be afraid that the market is high. The reason that I think that is because as the market, I don't necessarily believe that a market crash is coming, but if you believe that a market crash is coming, which is why people would be afraid to invest when it's high, real estate values, prices go down. Rents barely click down. So you don't have the risk of, my property went down and my rents went down with it. They don't go hand in hand. When you look at, the financial crash and, property values dropped 40%, rents dropped like 6%. For most people, a 6% drop in the rent rate is not going to change their cash flow enough to lose a property over, So I would say what a lot of people have said, when's the best time to invest? 10 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. It's never a bad time to invest in anything. If you've done your analysis and you know this is where you want to invest, timing it is not necessary. You don't have to time the market. You just have to analyze it and make sure that, there's enough return there. And I do believe that you should be in real estate for the long haul.
Yeah. Plus, what's really high, right? Because, we used to live in a multifamily house that the landlords bought it in 1979 for $32,000. It's probably worth about $800 now.
Yeah.
Who guarantees us that it's not going to be worth about, 1.4 20 or 30 years from now?
Yeah. Exactly.
Where's the ceiling there? Nobody can predict that ceiling.
You can't. And, even, knowing that, interest rates are starting to trend higher, you have the ability to refinance properties, and if you have a track record with a property that is generating income, I won't say it's an easy process, but it's a straightforward process with most lenders.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so basically, just to summarize, it's never a bad time to buy a property as long as the number works right?
Yeah, I don't think I'd never buy. Well, I won't say never, but I don't see a scenario where I would buy something that would be losing money day one. So, I'll say that like my minimum line is break even, though my minimum line's a little bit higher than I like to cash flow. But as long as you get a little bit of return, right, what you're going to get in appreciation if you're looking at it as a long-term investment is great. It's never a bad time to buy if the numbers work.
Yeah, because they say. Go ahead.
No, please.
Because like I think I don't know if I'm not 100% if it was you that told me this once, that there's 3 ways that you get paid when you buy a property like that. It pays for itself, right? Appreciation and the positive cash flow.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. That's why 90% of the millionaires and the billionaires, they own real estate for tax purposes. So it's never a bad time, to invest. So once again, thank you for being here today. We're actually gonna have to do an episode number 2 for Jeff, because we have much more to talk about, and I know you have things to do and people to see, this is information that is worth so much. And once again, we're here to create some positive content with value. So we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, to share this episode or any of our episodes with someone that you may think that's going to take advantage of the good content that we're producing here. And we'll see you guys next time with the Lighthouse Podcast.